Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right. Thank you, Mr. Producer. I am so happy because I am joined with the one and only Miss Tammy Goen. Now, first of all, welcome back, Tammy.
Thank you so much. It's always great to be here.
Tammy, for people who don't know who you are the owner at Lifescape Wellness. And basically, it's self-love and happiness for highly sensitive people. Can you refresh the audience and tell the audience what highly sensitive people are, what trait that is, and then a little bit about your business and the people that you help before we get into our great topic today, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, so I do work with primarily highly sensitive people, but also just people who tend to become really overwhelmed. And I know that's kind of a common thing these days, but to a level that makes it really challenging to be functioning. And those that are really struggling in relationships or other situations where they're just not feeling accepted, not feeling themselves, like they can be themselves. And with highly sensitive people, that's pretty typical or common. So highly sensitives process information more deeply than non-highly sensitives. We're about 20% of the population, which sometimes may be surprising, but within the 20%, we're in an 80% world of non-highly sensitive focus. So that deep processing can be a challenge. It can be an amazing benefit as well, which is what I really like to work with my clients on, is learning to understand, increase their self-awareness, and then develop tools so that they're not becoming overwhelmed, but then learn how to honor that within themselves so that it can be a superpower, basically. So what happens is we process things more deeply. So we're kind of like a big sponge that sucks everything in constantly, and we don't have the filters to kind of tune everything out. Like, you walk into a busy restaurant, and the non-highly sensitive person might notice a few things that are going on, maybe the music, maybe a party over in the corner, or a conversation like right behind, or the lighting or something like that, but they're not going to probably pick up on all of that at once, and it won't be a problem. It'll just be like, woohoo, nice party atmosphere or whatever.
Right.
And then a highly sensitive might, if it's more of an environmental focus, but it's pretty typical for HSPs we walk in there and we're aware of that all at once. So it's not like all of it. And in addition to that, we have the energetic piece. So when you have all those bodies, all of the energy radiating everywhere, there's all the sounds, all the motions, and then there's also all the energy. And so we take all that in at once. And rather than, we hear a lot of things like, why can't you just let that go? Or, oh, just ignore it. And we always sit back and go, yeah, that would be really great.
I don't think I would do that if I could.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's all about that processing level, and then how to learn how to adapt in a noisier environment, or how to change the environment, how to be prepared, have it like in that type of an example. I always work with folks to have some kind of a backup plan. It's like, okay, I really want to go to dinner with my friend, it's her birthday, I really want to do this, and there's this potential that it can be really overwhelming. So I need to have this plan to say, hey, I know this is your favorite restaurant, can we get a really quiet table in the back? Or I might only be able to stay so long, and then I might have to exit out, that kind of stuff, just being prepared ahead of time. And there's lots and lots of tools, and we can talk about that for a long time, but that's kind of the gist, that we can get overwhelmed because we're taking everything in, and we tend to feel energy really intensely, or before other people would be feeling the same thing, or they wouldn't feel that at all. And they often use the term, like canary in a coal mine. I mean, and that really is kind of how we are. I mean, we're going to be the ones that'll go into a situation and go, there's something off here. Something is needed, to take care of the situation, or somebody needs a certain thing. So we tend to pick up on all those kind of things. We notice the really, little details,
right?
And all those things, which, again, could be really, really amazing. And they could be safety features. They can be, something that helps us enjoy life better.
Right.
Life is really vibrant and intense and enjoyable. So as long as we have all those tools, then we're pretty good to go, and learn how to communicate not only what the trait is about, but what our needs are. Then that is really helpful.
Hey, Tammy, that example that you just gave us, does that is that like a nightmare for an HSP? That room. I mean, I mean, honestly, it seems like you're saying there are positives and stuff, but I mean, for someone that has this trait, would 9 out of 10, and everyone's different, but 9 out of 10 people with this trait, is this something that you wouldn't look forward to?
It does depend. So one of the things that's really important for managing high sensitivity is the nervous system. So if we practice meditation daily, for example, or doing a lot of recharge time and focusing on ourselves and building our reserves, if you will, like filling your bucket with serenity, basically. So if we can lower, if we increase our tolerance, but lower our baseline of our nervous system functioning, then we can handle more before it becomes overwhelming. So without any tools, yes, that would probably be most of the time, just like, forget it. I'm not even going to go
Right.
there.
Gotcha.
Or like, I can do this and get there and go, I can't do this and then leave. But when you have those tools ahead of time, you can handle things better. And then if you're aware and you really prepare, then you can handle things. But it does tend to, like, I mean, I don't enjoy going to noisy restaurants at all, because I can't focus on my friend or whoever I'm with to listen to them, because I'm hearing that conversation and that conversation and that one and the music and the all that kind of stuff. So it is definitely challenging. Outdoor events are usually easier because there's connection with nature, which is one piece that's really important too. But there's less tight energy, and sounds can dissipate a little bit better and things like that. So it does tend to be pretty challenging in those kinds of situations. So we usually like small groups, 2 or 3 people or one-on-one, and we're not antisocial at all.
Right, because a lot of people would think that, but that's not the case at all.
Right.
And I was so surprised to hear last week that you told me not all HSPs are introverts.
Correct. Yeah, 30% are extroverted.
Wow.
So, ish. So those folks have to be really conscious of what their limits are and their nervous system, because they put themselves out there and they want to be engaging more and doing, having more of that energy. And then suddenly they're like, okay, now I've completely overdone it. And now I'm exhausted. Now I have to escape. And then there can be an extra factor of guilt there, right? Because it's like, well, I did this to myself, right? I mean, I'm the one that wanted to do this.
Yeah.
But it is all about that, monitoring that level of ability to handle things, what your nervous system can handle, and having those tools to regroup and recharge. And sometimes it's just a matter of like, I just need an hour to myself, to be quiet, to do whatever I feel like doing, not have any energy around me, not have anything to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's like a reset. And like, okay, now I can do the rest of the day. Or, I work with clients all the time who is like, I don't know what to do with this party and this family gathering and this holiday and all this kind of stuff. And it's really helpful to just be able to say, I'm going to go take a walk around the house. I want a little exercise, and I'm going to do that on my own. I don't need any help.
Yeah, I don't need any help doing it.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, can I come? I'm like, I kind of just really need to be on my own for a minute, and then go do that. Or if it's at your own house, find a reason to disappear for an hour or something, and then come back. And then usually you can kind of rejoin, as long as you're not trying to make yourself stick with it when you're just really, really overwhelmed.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it makes plenty of sense, because I know someone very close who has narcolepsy. And what they need to do is, at some point during the day, they need to, take a small nap. If they don't, they really can't function. So when you have these traits, there are the things, and through education and through everything that there's nothing that you can't handle, right? You find ways to cope and to deal with it, so it works for the person with the trait, right?
Well, yes, but I would say that there are things that ultimately are really just not a good fit, and that can happen in the business world. For example, like, let's say you're you have always wanted to be a journalist and you end up in an office with an open office plan. So you got little cubicles, but they're all open air, right? So you
Oh,
can pretty
dear.
much hear everybody's conversation on the phone. People are running, zipping. I mean, I'm not a journalist. This is based on probably what I've seen on movies.
Yeah,
but,
I understand.
Yeah. But, the busyness of people going all over the place and people, yelling across the room for something. And, like you need to be in the office at, such and such, whatever. And just like all that stuff, that's going to be probably
Oh my God.
pretty darn challenging.
What's the worst you could think of? I was thinking stockbroker.
Oh yeah. Oh. And again, I've never actually been there, just seen it on TV,
Yeah.
But yeah, oh yeah, anything that is just super high paced, super frenetic, lots of people, lots of energy, and really no downtime, no quiet time,
Yeah.
no, like I'm gonna put on my earphones and just listen to the music that works for me and tune everything out. If there's not any options for that kind of stuff, it would be, really.
So thanks for explaining that. So I think we, people who are new, I think, we got a good picture on what this trait is. And I'm kind of excited because today you're going to tell us and you're going to give us some information about how using a metaphor for 3 types of flowers can help to understand and consider HSP. So this is going to be very interesting. It's going to be quite poetic, I think. I don't know, but
Yes,
I'm just interested.
I'm just going to put these out there. If you think of a dandelion, a tulip, and an orchid. So just process that for a minute. Just visualize those 3 flowers. And
what's the third one?
And any thoughts that come up. Orchid. So dandelion, tulip, orchid. And you probably have a visual of those, what they look like. Think about what their needs are and how they grow, where they grow, what they need to grow. And that's kind of how we can look at the spectrum of sensitivity. So if we look at a dandelion, they'll pretty much grow anywhere, right?
Yeah.
If it's disturbed, they're fine. They don't need any help. And I'm not saying that, people who are not highly sensitive, just leave them alone and they're totally fine.
No, I get
supported. But
the dandelion is green with a little snowball on it, right? That's a dandelion.
Which, people consider weeds, but you can eat them. So, it's not like they're dangerous.
I heard that the other day. That's weird.
But they will, they'll thrive pretty easily anywhere and they don't need a lot of care. They just, any plant will thrive with more care if you give it love and attention and that kind of stuff. It's going to grow better, sure.
Right.
But left on its own, it's pretty sturdy, right? Then we have a tulip, which is kind of in the mid-range. So it's definitely going to do better with certain care. You definitely have to keep them away from deer. You have to make sure they have enough water and not too much, but they're not like temperamental or super fragile. And as long as they have the right conditions, they're going to grow and they're going to keep coming back and they're, pretty moderately sturdy. They're, if you hit them too hard, they could, you could pop the blooms off. But you can step on a dandelion and it'll pop right back up, no problem. Can't do that with a tulip. Okay. So then we look at an orchid. So anyone who's ever tried to grow an orchid will know this. That would be me, not successfully. They require very specific type of care to thrive. And you've probably seen them either in the store or somebody's house or whatever, when they are doing well. I mean, they are just amazing, right? I mean, they're just vibrant if they're thriving, right? But if they're not getting the right amount of water and frequency and the conditions of the soil and all of those kinds of things, they're not going to thrive. And they're very easily disturbed, right? If you bump them or, you could just barely hit one of the petals and it would probably fall off, so it's a completely different level than looking at the dandelion. So if we think of that as a spectrum of sensitivity, we have the non-highly sensitives. Like if you were to take the inventory, you'd probably score nothing or maybe 1 or 2 as the dandelions, right? And then we have, somewhere in the middle, there's like, well, yeah, I'm sensitive to this sometimes, not so much to this. Environmental stuff, I don't notice, but I can kind of feel energy sometimes. And I can, so you can kind of in the middle, we're probably looking at like tulip, right? And then when we look at the real highly sensitive, on that spectrum, the 20% or so. And sometimes that can be, like every single item on an inventory versus, well, all but maybe a handful. But somewhere in that range, that 20% would be the orchids.
Okay.
And so we need different things than others who are not highly sensitive to thrive. And so it's kind of just a good visual, because
it is
not only like, oh, you have to do these things to, to help out, to be supportive. You have to know the right things, the right ways to be supportive or encourage that growth. And when it has those things, it can thrive and just be absolutely amazing. It can bring all this amazing bright light to the world. And so it's not just like, oh man, I got an orchid, now I have to do, it's like, oh, I've got this orchid. Okay, let's do the right things and let's do all this stuff so I can really thrive.
Yeah.
So,
and Tammy, isn't there to go along with this? Isn't there a place? I don't know if it's on your website, but there is a place where you can kind of assess. Is that on your? Tell us about
yeah,
that, because I think that's important.
If you go to my Linktree site, which is, if you're familiar with Linktree, just find my name, Tammy Goen, but it's linktr.ee/ and then my name, which is TAMMYGOEN. And there is a link on there for a very specific inventory. So you can just, click on that and go. There's a lot of other resources on there as well. And then Elaine Aron, ARON, has her own inventory as well. So, and you can pretty much probably just Google high sensitivity self-test or something, and other ones will pop up. Because actually the very first one I took, I actually couldn't find again. It's been more than 10 years. But I just typed in, high sensitivity, or my friend might have said highly sensitive. It was because that's how I discovered it. Somebody said, hey, you should check this out online. And I pulled it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. So yeah, if you could just Google it or something, it would probably pop up as well. But
besides getting a hold of you, is that a good starting point? If people are watching this and like, wait a minute, that's me. Should they get in touch with you, and how do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, if everything I talked about, they're going, well, that totally sounds like me, then yeah, they could just reach out. They can schedule off of that Linktree profile too. There's a link to a free discovery call. They can call and say, hey, I've really connected with this, and I'm really struggling. What do I do? And they can just schedule that directly through that little link, and without even having to call or anything. But they can certainly call me or email, or whatever. I have my Facebook and my Instagram and all that kind of stuff on there too. So yeah, definitely can reach out and say, I'm dealing with this and this and this. I don't know if it's related to high sensitivity or not, but is this something? And then we can talk about different options for sure.
Got you. Well, that was a great example, because it kind of puts the picture in your head, and it worked. It worked for me, because it helped me understand it, because I've just learned about this through you. So of course I have a lot to learn, but that put a nice mental image in it. Sometimes it really helps.
And if you think about it too, because it is a genetic trait, it's not a choice. So the flower metaphor works as well. It's like, okay, they're an orchid's not going to try to be a dandelion. An orchid's an orchid, and a dandelion's a dandelion, and they just do their thing, and that's the way they were made. And so highly sensitives, we're just born that way, and it's the way we're wired, and then that's who we are.
Well, guys, I am speaking with Tammy Goen, and Tammy's website is it's Lifescape-wellness.com, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tammy, you want to take a couple questions?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Mr. Producer, what you got, my man?
We have Marissa in Salt Lake City, and
Marissa.
This one's a little wordy, but it's a good question. If an HSP's first interaction with a person is negative, is it more likely that moment will stick in their brain until they see each other again?
Wow, that's good. I want to
know. It definitely has the potential for that. I would say, because we tend to be very intuitive, our first hits are pretty strong. So we can, because one of the things I didn't talk about today yet, but we tend to, rehash things, rethink things, overthink things, not just think and think of all the different sides of things and that kind of thing. So if we can get like stuck on some stuff. So if our first hit is, I don't know that I like this person, or there's something that feels really, really off, but then everything the rest of the time goes along fairly smoothly, and you're like, I wonder why I'm, feeling that way, and maybe I should let that go, and which, is going to be challenging, but
Right, of course.
But maybe, initially you have that hit, but you're going, okay, well, I'm going to try to let that go and see what happens and that kind of stuff. And then a lot of times we end up going, see, I knew if I just listened to my intuition, I would have realized it wasn't just, not that it has to be a bad person, but that connection wasn't there. But sometimes things can happen. This is kind of this question a little bit differently that will lead us to think, maybe we've heard a story about this person, or maybe some kind of event happened, and as a result we have this picture, even though we don't know the person yet. That can kind of stick with us a little bit, which will prevent us from really getting to know that person sometimes, because we can be like, oh, well, I already kind of know that this is probably not going to be a good connection for me.
Do you guys have good memories usually?
Well, I would say that we should, but I certainly don't. But so we remember like at a visceral level. I would say for sure, like when you're around someone, you like, oh, you're right. This energy is challenging for me.
Yeah,
and I'd totally forgotten about this person, but like, oh, wait, now I'm remembering that. Or, like the really important stuff, like where did I just put my keys?
You're right.
Kind of stuff,
Yeah,
not necessarily, but we are very attentive to detail. So we do notice a lot of things, like, the tests where they say, okay, you look at this scene and then go away. Now, what do you remember?
Yeah.
And list all the things, or did you see this, and yes, no, yes, whatever. We're pretty good with that kind of stuff because we notice things and like a snapshot.
Right, because you get all at one time.
Right.
It's a lot to take in, but it's very it affects you a lot. And to piggyback on her question, which was a great question, what would happen if you would have met the person that she was talking about in that scenario that you gave us before in the show, where it was this busy room and everything was happening at one time? It was completely overwhelming, and then you met that person. Would that person have a negative component to them because you met them in a place that was overwhelming?
That's an interesting question too. I mean, it could just from the association, it could bring up that, again, that visceral feeling of like, oh, that reminds me of, that kind of thing. But at the same time, we still tend to have that intuitive piece if we're listening, that we could say, oh, this is a weird environment, but I think I really want to get to know that person more. Maybe I didn't have an opportunity to do that at all this time, but you kind of have that hit. I think there's something there for me.
Yeah.
Or I think I need to find a different way, and not in this kind of crazy environment. To get to know this person better. So maybe find a way to reach out, because it's more of that intuitive, hit. Like, I think it was Marissa, what's her name, was asking, but that we do have that. It's one of those things that for everyone, that we learn to listen, to that hit, to that intuition.
Right. Gotcha. Hey, great question. What was her name? Was that?
Yeah, that was Marissa.
Marissa, good question. Mr. Producer, do we have time to do one more? We do? Okay, Mr. Producer, got one more for us.
Robert in Kansas City wants to know, can some HSPs get overwhelmed at large events like concerts?
Oh, I like to know that too. Yeah.
Yes, and it's interesting. So part of it is, just the noise level, right? So there's just cacophony of noise. But there's also tons of energy from people. So I mean, we all radiate energy, right? So, and if everybody's energy is really up and they're, it's higher than normal, then there's that energy. And then yes, there's lights and there's motion and there's all of those kinds of things. And it's interesting though, if you're really focused on something and it's like, it's all revolving around that particular thing. So you're a concert, you go to listen to music. And so if everyone is going to be listening to that music, and there's not going to be very many conversations in the back because everyone's focused on that. And
Right.
it's all kind of in a flow. That can be easier. It can definitely still be a challenge. Depending again on what how your nervous system is when you go in to the situation, what you're prepared for. It's often easier to be like on an aisle, be ready to just go head out and take a break and come back.
Right.
Something like that can be really important. So it kind of depends. Like I'm a dancer, and I will go to. So I'm an introvert, and I'm HSP, and I'll go to big dance events where there'll be 200 or 300 people dancing. As
Wow.
many of those people all at once on the floor as can get on there. And I'm totally okay with that in, like increments. So after
Oh.
a little while, like, okay, I got to go take a break,
Mhm.
have my little downtime, and then I come back. And there are, there's going to be some discussion, like in the background, not on the floor kind of thing. But it's, again, it's very focused. Everyone's there to dance. And there's not a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on. It's just, a little bit of stuff in the background, but it's really focused on either the music or, what people are seeing on the dance floor, and then you're dancing. So those kinds of things I can handle. But if it's a more chaotic situation, like I was on my bucket list, I always wanted to go to New Orleans Jazz Festival, Blues Festival.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, and it like could have happened this one year, getting it all ready. And then I pulled up video of some of the events, and I just said, oh, okay, that's not on my bucket list anymore.
Yeah.
I will not be able to do that. I mean, it's like thousands and thousands and thousands of people in front of one stage, and the screens and all that. I'm like, okay. I mean, I just immediately felt anxious, and I said, oh, okay, this is not well suited for me. I'm going to just listen to the music on my stereo or on my, YouTube.
I don't know what would be worse, that or going to New York City to watch the ball drop in the street. I won't see you there, and you won't see me there either. So, guys, that is the great Tammy Goen. Tammy, you got the floor. Anything you want to leave us with, and then once again, tell us how to get a hold of you. Thanks for helping us understand this trait, because it's something a lot of people don't know about, and I think you're doing a great job by getting it out there. Because I know there's a lot of people like, that's me, and so you're helping a lot of people. Cool.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and I would say, I would just leave everybody with that reminder that, like the flowers, this is the way we're wired. So we are either highly sensitive, or maybe you're not highly sensitive, but you're interacting with someone who might be. It's just acknowledging that that's just the way we're wired, and so being able to honor that. Just this is part of who I am. This is part of who this person is, and that's good, and that's okay, and it can be amazing. So, and then just can reach out to. You can go into my website, lifescape-wellness.com, but I have all kinds of other stuff available on Linktree. So linktr.ee/Tammy Goen, TammyGoen.
Right. Tammy, always a pleasure. Can't wait to hear what you got to say next. Thank you again. Sorry I didn't get to everybody, but we will do our best next time. Thank you, Tammy. Have a great
Thank you so much.
Right back,
Great
guys.
to be here.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes. and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.